The weather is getting warmer and we are in the middle of spring break season. It's also the season we stop hiding under our sweaters and break out of comfort food mode. One of our favorite experts is joining us to talk about spring cleaning your diet.
In my opinion, there's a big difference between having a cheese stick versus having a corn chip that has 15 other ingredients because it's flavored.
And the one thing this dietitian says every woman should be adding to their routine for physical and mental health.
When you said that, I always associate it with, and maybe this is showing my age and my phase, but
I know what you're gonna say.
I always thought of it as like meatheads in the gym.
And if your kids like to set up a lemonade stand in the summer, we introduce you to sisters who are taking their business to the next level. That's today on Mom Squad. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me on Mom Squad. I'm Maureen Kyle. No matter where you are watching from, I'm going to guess that the weather has turned and we are now in the first week of spring. Every year, I'm in conversations with moms and dads about how they overindulged in the winter and they want to focus on their health now that the warmer months are upon us. There's also a trend that we can't ignore because it's all over social media: getting enough protein. If you try to get the new supposed requirements, you feel like you're constantly eating meat all day long. Is this really necessary? I called on one of my good friends, nationally recognized dietitian Kristen Kirkpatrick, to ask, what should we really be focusing on with our diets?
Kristen, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes, of course. As a fellow mom, I'm just so happy to be on your show. It's always amazing. You give such great insight to all those moms that are in need. So
oh my gosh. Well, I feel the same way about you. That's why I always have you on here. And I feel like I'm coming to you from my kitchen where I'm always trying to figure out how to get more protein. We'll talk about that in this episode. But this time of year, I always like picking your brain about how to kind of spring clean our diet, because it's almost not sweater time anymore. It's not sweater weather. We can't hide under the sweaters. We're going to be in our summer clothes. People are going to try those shorts on and feel uncomfortable. And I know that's not what it's all about, but that's usually when people go, oh my gosh, what have I been eating? Have I fallen off track?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Totally. And I feel like, we could put this on repeat and do this segment every year at this time because people fall off track. So really the question is, why do they fall off track? Why do we make these very dramatic changes to be able to get into the tank top or the shorts and look our best and feel our best, whatever that means to us? And then come October, we're going to go back to our old ways. So one of the things I've been telling my patients and moms is that we kind of need to take a break from being so hard on ourselves and being realistic about what's going to be considered healthy. And I think, Maureen, a great way to look at this is all the news we see about ultra processed foods. Now, there's no doubt that ultra processed foods are not good for us. There's no doubt about that. But there is a spectrum of processing, and it's almost impossible to eat a completely raw diet. So that's kind of one of the places where I've been looking at. Instead of, as a mom, saying, okay, when I go to the grocery store, I cannot buy anything ultra processed, or I can't buy anything processed. Instead, let's say, okay, well, let's look at what our meals and snacks are going to look like this week. And if we do buy an ultra processed foods, maybe that's just 5% of what we eat. Let's start there by kind of giving ourselves a break with the stringent nature of how we look at our food choices.
So then when you are walking around, I try to walk the perimeter of the grocery store. We try to eat as many whole foods as possible. Those one ingredient, an apple, a piece of chicken. The snacks are, I think, where everybody falls short. I feel like we've talked about this before, but when it comes to picking one of those processed foods for us and our kids, what do you think is on the good list?
Yeah, I think ingredients are going to matter, and really not just the ingredients as in terms of what they look like, but in terms of where they fall in the ingredient list, and then also how many ingredients we have in the product. So ultra processed foods are really defined as a complete derivative from food. So while it may have started as food at some point, it ends up as nothing that looks anything like food. So really our ingredient list will be an indicator of that as well. Look for things that don't have additives, don't have food dyes. I know that some food dyes have been banned. Not all of them have been. So that's one thing to look at. If you have a product that has, let's say, 3 ingredients or less, that's probably going to be a little bit of a better option than something that has 15 ingredients. So that's kind of number one. Also, is there any derivative of food? So do we have food somewhere in this? In my opinion, there's a big difference between having a cheese stick versus having a corn chip that has 15 other ingredients because it's flavored, right? So again, this cheese stick still looks like food. I don't think the corn chip does, right? So that's another thing to look at is really how close is it to food? How few ingredients do I have? And do I understand the ingredients that I see there on the list?
Yeah. So what I see with, as we're all buying in bulk, if we have families, when I'm going up and down some of these aisles, I see, all natural or I see organic, but with my kids love sort of the granola bars or the protein bars where it's like nuts and stuff all together. I always question, is this too much sugar? What do you think of some of those items that have gotten labeled as healthy, but are still very processed?
Yeah, well, so the healthy labeling from the FDA is relatively new. I think consumers are still trying to determine what it actually means. We've never had healthy as something that's on a label because it hasn't been allowed by the FDA. So I think from a standpoint of sugar, especially when we're looking at our kids, is it coming in naturally? The obvious answer is that yes, fruits, vegetables, things like that, that's going to be our best source. Not always the best source for kids because they're not a fan of it. So if you're on the go and looking at, okay, do I have dried fruit in this product versus an actual sugar in the second ingredient? How many grams of sugar do I have? And how is that set up versus grams of fiber? So I think that's another thing to look at as well. If you have a granola bar, that's a great example. May it have sugar? Probably if it's a kid's granola bar, but does it have a lot of nuts and seeds, things like that? That's going to up the fiber, the healthy fats. What other nutrients are we getting in so that it is making the right choice in terms of nutrient density? If there's some sugar there, then you can eliminate sugar other places throughout the day. So it's not just what you have right then and there at that snack or meal. It is what does the entire day look like? And then in addition to that, what's your physical activity level look like? Is your kid on screens all day or are they out running around? That's going to make a huge difference as well.
You mentioned fiber, and I want to ask because I feel like it hasn't been getting the focus that it probably should over the past couple of years, but I've been seeing more and more information about the importance of tracking our fiber just as much as we're tracking protein, which we'll talk about in a moment, or calories or sugars. When I'm looking at that fiber content, what should I be aiming for both me and my kids?
Yeah. So number one, the body has to get used to fiber. So if you're someone who has 0 fiber in their diet and then you put in front of a child like a cup of black beans, it's not going to go over well, right? The body is going to say, I don't really get this. But it's going to take some time to understand it. And eventually it does. But the point here is that some fiber is better than 0 fiber at all. So again, you can look at how much fiber is in a product, but keep in mind that might be added in artificially. So a product may up its fiber content by adding it in some components, right? That's not always ideal. The best way to look at fiber is eating more plants. Plants only come from fiber. Fiber has benefits to our gut health. We've seen that in study after study. For moms, fiber plays a huge role in being able to manage weight and also able to control our appetite. So that's another big component as well. So getting whole foods, fresh foods, plants, that's the best way to get fiber into the diet. And then if you want to have a bar that's got fiber added in, that's fine too, but don't make that the majority of where your fiber needs are coming in.
With protein, I kind of want to, let's start on the protein train just because I think that that's also where we've been focusing, and then we'll probably work our way back to gut health and fiber. What I'm seeing, and maybe it's because of the algorithm, but I'm sure you're seeing it too, Kristen, the pressure of getting in enough protein in a day to maintain the muscle mass, which then burns fat and everything. I mean, I've seen moms joke about like, God, it's like a full-time job just to get protein in
Yeah.
during the day. And I've tried to track it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought a piece of chicken would get me a lot further than this.
Yep.
I want to know, is this a big myth? Is this something we should be focusing on? And then how do we achieve it?
Well, let me just start off by saying that protein deficiency in the United States is incredibly rare. While we may see it in other places on the globe, we don't really see it in the United States. So that's kind of number one. Number two, I also think the discussion of protein, and I know, Maureen, you and I have had discussions about this before, have really intensified because of the popularity of GLP-1 agonist drugs. So looking at people that are on Mounjaro or Ozempic, things like that, it's like protein, protein, protein. And so that then has kind of saturated other news outlets in terms of, well, should we all be getting more protein because it seems to work for this population? So number one, our protein needs vary by a lot of different things. What is your activity level? What is your age? Are you pregnant or breastfeeding? All of those things play a role in your actual protein needs. Are you getting too much? Probably not. Probably not, unless you're only focusing on protein and nothing else. That provides an additional harm, because if you just have protein in your diet, it means you're not getting complex carbohydrates or healthy fats, because the protein is dominating as your macronutrients. And then in terms of the pressure to get protein, it's really easier to maintain a normal level of getting adequate protein throughout the day if protein is sprinkled into every meal and snack. So for example, if you're having breakfast and you're having steel cut oats, add in some hemp seeds. That adds protein. Maybe lunch, you're going to bump up that protein a little bit more by having salmon on top of a salad. So looking at where can we get protein throughout the day versus, can I just have this protein shake that gives me 50 grams and then like, I'll call it a day, or I'll just have some chicken on top of that, right? So instead of a means to an end, I think that we can look at protein in terms of, let's just get some within the diet every time we eat, or almost every time we eat. If you're older, you're going to need a lot more to offset the risk of sarcopenia, but it does make a big difference for muscle mass. And then there's supplements that we can look at for that as well. But I think protein deficiency is not happening in this country. If you miss a meal with protein, it's not like you're going to wake up the next day without any muscle.
Right. So is there that calculation, and I forget what the calculation is, to figure out how much protein we should be getting to, I don't know anybody out there who wouldn't say they want to burn fat and look leaner. So like that's the calculation that I see going viral all the time. It's like, oh, burn fat, look leaner. Here's how much protein you need to get. Is there truth to that?
Yeah, so there's it's 0.8. The traditional numbers were about 0.8 to 1.3 grams per kilogram of body weight, right? So that's how you would calculate what your range is of protein. And if you do that calculation, it's probably a lot less than what you think. You're probably meeting that. So I think there is truth to that. There is science to that. But again, that calculation is going to be based on a personalization of your own health goals, your age, all of these factors that are really important. Some individuals will do fine at that lower end. Some individuals, studies show, need to be at a much higher end. So it depends on what you as a human are hoping to achieve in terms of health span and longevity. That calculation is then going to look different from someone who might be younger or may not need as much protein, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know I have my bias here, but this is why working with a dietitian to really personalize that number and calculate that need is so important.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Kristen and I talk about how to fix your gut health, which helps both immunity and weight control, and the one supplement she says every woman should be taking. It's going to surprise you. Welcome back. If you're confused about what to eat to achieve a healthy lifestyle, you are not alone. There's so much information out there about how much protein to eat, what supplements we need, and what processed foods to avoid. Today, dietitian Kristen Kirkpatrick talks about what to add to your diet. And stay tuned, because she told me the latest supplement every woman should be adding to their routine, and it's not one that was on my radar.
When you're seeing patients who might need to rehabilitate their gut health, like how is that affecting their overall health, their ability to lose weight, their ability to stay healthy?
Yeah, I think it has a huge impact, not just on weight loss, but also on blood sugar management, on our cognitive health, heart health. I mean, we've seen study after study that the gut is really kind of the second brain, and it's so important in terms of our overall health. So, number one, sometimes the easiest way to look at should we start assessing gut health a bit more is really what's happening in the bathroom. Are we constipated? Are we straining? Is there something going on where, our poop is telling us a story that maybe we need to change some things in the diet. Maybe we need a little bit more fiber, a little bit less meat, things like that, right? So I think that focusing on gut health is a much better conversation in terms of our psyche and our mental health than, okay, let's just avoid all ultra processed foods forever and ever, right? Because it really does encourage us to get more of those plants, things like that. There's two things that I think are really important in gut health. One is called resistant starch, and you can find resistant starch in bananas and in whole grains, and it literally resists digestion and then becomes fermented in the large intestine. So it becomes food for those probiotics that we need, right? So there's that. It's very similar to prebiotics as well, which is non-digestible fibers. So anytime we have a fiber that's not digested, that is going to help our overall gut health. So that's kind of number one when we look at that. Number two, where are we getting our fiber from? Which I know we've discussed already, but are we getting it as an additional ingredient in a bar? Or are we getting it by chomping into an apple that has soluble and insoluble fiber, right? So I think fiber makes a big deal. And then fermented foods. When I ask my patients, like, well, tell me how many fermented foods you eat, they will sit there, look at the ceiling and be like, I don't think I have any, right? Or, oh, okay, every once in a while, my friend gives me a kombucha and that's it, right? So I think like really kind of embracing the fermentation side of foods can really make a huge difference in our gut health as well. And stress management, a lot of things play a role.
Fermented foods. Like I've tried kombucha before, but for anybody watching that's like, well, what does that mean? I mean, does vinegar do the trick, or like, are we adding in more fermented foods?
Yeah, no, vinegar can definitely help. Tempeh is a fermented food. That's fermented tofu. Pickles are fermented. So if you're someone who really enjoys eating pickles, that's fermented. Pickled vegetables, kimchi, that would be fermented. So that's what that's what we're looking at when we look at fermented foods. So I always tell my patients, you kind of have to make an effort to get them, right? Like it's kind of like you have to say, okay, I'm going to have tempeh tonight on my veggie bowl. And that's maybe something you haven't had before. But I think it's worth the effort, even if it's just a few times a week, because we do know that fermentation plays a huge role in improving our overall gut health.
Mm-hmm. I also, before I let you go, I want to talk about supplements as well, just because I know you've brought it up. And again, among friends, we're talking about everything supplements. Like, should I be adding collagen to my coffee? Will that help with the protein? Will, taking a multivitamin help with any of this, especially with whether it's gut health or anything else? Like, where do you think we should be adding in supplements, and which ones are the most effective?
Yeah, I think number one, we always have to, and I put my patients through this questioning as well when they come to see me. I always ask people to tell me what their why is. Why are you here? Why do you eat the way you do? Why do you exercise? What's the why? And we all have some why. That could be prevention of Alzheimer's. It could be prevention of a cancer. I don't want to have a heart attack like my dad did at 30. I want to get on the ground and play with my grandkids, so I don't like this chronic pain. We all in the back of our head have a why. And that's where we need to start the conversation with supplements, because certain supplements can help certain whys, but it's not a one size fits all. Right? So I think if we just look in general, what are supplements that might make sense? A probiotic or prebiotic might make sense if you're really struggling with that gut health, you're really struggling with increasing fiber. I just wrote an article on creatine for women. Creatine has so many benefits that we are now seeing, just so much benefits to women, from reproductive health to mental health to muscle mass, right? So that probably makes sense for most women to look at that. So a creatine. And then all the other ones, so B12, fish oil, things like that, that's all going to fall into what does your laboratory data look like? What are your health goals? And are you actually missing that in your diet? And I think, Maureen, that's the question we often don't ask. We'll just say, well, I'm going to take this B12 because I saw this study. Okay, well, are you vegan? Do you not eat any animal products? No, I love animal products. Okay, and you're probably getting enough B12, right? So are we actually not getting it from the diet, which is the preferred source?
Yeah.
To make a decision, I'm going to take a supplement.
You just blew my mind with creatine. Only because when you said that, I always associate it with, and maybe this is showing my age and my phase, but
I know what you're going to say.
I always thought of it as like meatheads in the gym. Like I would never, I saw another, like, I don't know who I'm following some influencer that she's taking creatine. And I was like, well, cause she's a gym rat and I'm not, but why? Wait, why creatine?
Yeah. I mean, even if you're not, I don't know what women does not want, more muscle mass, but even if that's not your goal, the benefits that creatine has shown to the brain lately, to mental health. So looking at things like depression, it's really quite interesting. And we're talking about strong studies. Creatine started getting studied many years ago, but our recent studies are really showing something above and beyond. Now, we make some in the body, but we just don't make enough. And we don't get enough through diet. And women process creatine differently than men. So we are much more likely to be deficient than men are, based on certain components, genetically speaking. So the benefits for women are really superior. And the nice thing is it is a pretty riskless type of supplement. Now, again, the benefits run kind of the spectrum, which one is going to make sense for you. But in terms of looking at creatine for women, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. If you had a patient come to you and just say, I'm getting to that age, or I've just had like hormones. I feel like when you're a mom, you're in the phase of either you feel like you're still recovering from having children, and then you go right into like the perimenopause phase where it's like, now my hormones are all over the place. Is there a way to help our diet support what our bodies are going through hormonally that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think from a hormonal perspective, and obviously working with physicians that are very in tune with women's hormonal health is really important as well, especially as women start considering maybe hormone replacement therapy, right? Because I feel like that's half my patients. They're on progesterone, they're on testosterone, they're on all these different hormones, but they're working with a physician or someone who really knows about that. So I think that our diet can play a role if we are following a diet that helps with control of blood sugar, if we're following a diet that helps in increasing that nutrient density, when we have a lot of ultra processed foods, when we have a lot of just empty calories, things like that, we're not giving our body the nutrients it needs as we age to support our hormonal health as well. So I think just having a nutrient dense diet, the Mediterranean diet would be a great example of this, can really help with hormonal health. Unfortunately, as we get more close to menopause, we might have to look at some supplement options as well, and maybe taking some hormones as well as they naturally dip.
Kristen Kirkpatrick, thank you. You can go to her website, kristenkirkpatrick.com, or catch her articles on NBC's Today Show website. Now, when we come back, sisters who started out with a simple lemonade stand are making big money as entrepreneurs. If you have kids, I'm guessing at least once a summer they ask to run a lemonade stand. Well, two sisters in Harrisburg started that way, and now they have a thriving business before they even hit their teens. Gabrielle Mediak has their story.
There's nothing quite like a cold drink on a hot summer day. At just 9 and 11 years old, Harrisburg sisters Rain and Taj Saunders were wise beyond their years, and they had a mind for business.
We thought of something that would do good in the summertime, and we thought of lemonade, and that was 6 years ago.
From humble beginnings,
we had a table, we had a little flimsy tablecloth. Me and my sister went to the store and we just got blue plain shirts, And it started right here in our home, in our backyard.
To recently expanding their own business into an on-the-go operation.
It's very, very exciting to know that we just started at a table in our backyard or at a carnival, and now that we have an entire trailer.
Rain and Taj's homemade lemonade continues to grow.
When we first started, we only had 4, which were strawberry, mango, lemon, and blueberry.
They now have more than 20 flavors.
We like to get inspiration from other businesses or think of things that we would want to try that we haven't seen before.
But proving themselves as young entrepreneurs wasn't easy. They faced a lot of skepticism.
These are 2 little kids. How are they gonna actually make a profit off this and sell me some good lemonade? And it was also my friends and peers your lemonade business isn't serious. You don't see yourself going places.
Now at 14 and 17 years old, they're sharing their journey of success.
I was just around all these college students and I was like, wow, they actually like our lemonade, and I see that this is not just a small business anymore and that this could actually be something.
And the pair has no plans of stopping anytime soon. Their goal is to expand into a warehouse and brick and mortar store where they can hire employees to help them make that fresh lemonade. And the sisters hope what they've accomplished can be an inspiration to other young people.
I would say keep going. Things aren't going to always go the way that you want them to, but you just have to keep striving, especially if you have goals. It'll definitely help your perseverance.
Gabrielle Mediak, reporting for Newswatch 16.
Those girls are going to do amazing things in life. Thank you for joining me today on Mom Squad. You can catch all of the episodes streaming now on your local news app and on the Mom Squad YouTube page. I'm Maureen Kyle. Thanks for being part of the squad.